Whether it's the food on your plate or the show you're streaming right now, it all depends on this huge, complex web of connections. So today, we're going to dive into the vital arteries of the United Kingdom. Yeah, the networks that literally keep the nation's heart beating.
Okay, so let me ask you this. What do motorways, the internet, and Peppa Pig all have in common? I know, it sounds like the setup for a really weird joke, right? But stick with me, because the answer actually gets to the very core of how a modern country like the UK really works.
Well, the answer is they're all part of a nation's arteries. And we're not just talking about roads. We're talking about these huge, intricate networks that move, well, everything. People, goods, ideas, culture, you name it. They're constantly flowing, not just inside the country, but all around the world.
All right, so first up, let's look at what's happening inside the UK itself. What are those crucial internal arteries connecting everyone and everything?
So let's start with something you've probably seen if you've driven in the UK. Smart motorways. These are the ones that use all that tech, the electronic signs, the changing speed limits. It's all designed to manage traffic on the fly. The whole idea is pretty simple, really. Keep cars moving and stop us all from sitting in those awful traffic jams.
But, and this is a big but, there's a huge debate around them. On one hand, the goal is great, make journeys quicker, use the roads we have more smartly. But on the other hand, a lot of drivers find them, well, confusing and maybe even a bit scary. Especially that whole thing where the hard shoulder, the emergency lane, can suddenly just become another lane of traffic. It's a real point of contention.
Okay, let's switch gears from roads to rails and talk about a project that is just massive. I'm talking about High Speed 2, or HS2. This is this huge plan to build a brand new high-speed railway, linking London up with cities in the north, like Birmingham to start.
And believe me, HS2 has got people really divided. The supporters, they see it as a total game changer for the UK economy. It could slash journey times, connect businesses like never before. But the critics, they're pointing to a budget that has just exploded. We're talking over £100 billion. Plus, there are major worries that it'll just make London even richer. And what about the environmental cost? We're talking about ancient woodlands being torn down to make way for it.
All right, so we've looked inside the UK. Now let's zoom out, because the UK is an island, right? So how does it connect with the rest of the world? It's all about the gateways.
Being an island means seaports are basically the UK's lifelines. A really great example of this is the London Gateway Port. It opened back in 2013, and this place is built to handle some of the biggest container ships in the entire world. That's a huge deal for the UK's ability to trade internationally, and it created a ton of jobs too.
And of course, you can't talk about global gateways without talking about air travel. Heathrow is the big one, right? The UK's busiest international airport. But here's the thing, it's almost completely full. It's running at nearly full capacity, which brings up a massive, controversial question. Should it be expanded? And that question leads directly to the massive debate over building a third runway. The people who support it say it's absolutely essential for the economy. It'll create jobs, it'll boost trade. But the opponents, well, they see a totally different picture. They're talking about a huge increase in carbon emissions, constant noise pollution for people living nearby, and, this is the really stark part, it would mean demolishing people's homes. Whole communities, like the village of Sipson, would literally be wiped off the map.
So, we've talked about the big physical connections, roads, railways, airports. But what about the connections you can't see? Some of the most powerful arteries are totally invisible. They're all about the flow of data, and even culture.
Just take a look at this number, 90%. That's roughly how much of the UK population is online. Think about that. The internet has totally transformed, well, everything. How we talk to each other, how we work, how we see the world. But here's the crazy part. This invisible digital world, it actually has a very real physical backbone. And you can see it right here. We're talking about huge undersea fiber optic cables that snake across the ocean floor. These cables are what physically connect the UK to the rest of the planet, carrying a mind-boggling amount of data every single second.
And these arteries don't just carry data, they carry culture too. Remember Peppa Pig from the beginning? British TV shows have become these massive global exports. I mean, kids all over the world watch Peppa Pig. And dramas like Downton Abbey have become huge hits in so many countries. They are, in their own way, incredibly powerful cultural arteries.
Okay, for our last section, let's pull back a bit and look at the bigger picture. Because history and politics play a huge role in how all these connections are formed, and sometimes how they're broken.
You really can't understand the UK today without looking at its history.
Take the Commonwealth, for instance. Those historical ties, born out of the British Empire, led to really significant migration, especially after World War II. People came to the UK to help fill labor shortages, and they ended up shaping the modern, multicultural Britain that exists today.
And then, of course, there's Europe. For more than 40 years, the UK's main connection, politically and economically, was with the European Union. It joined back in 1973, which opened up this massive free trade market. But, as we all know, that chapter came to a dramatic end in 2016 with the Brexit vote.
And that one decision, it fundamentally rewired the UK's arteries. The old trade arrangements were basically ripped up. Suddenly, the country had to go out and build brand new economic connections with the rest of the world. And that process, as you can imagine, is full of huge new challenges, and maybe some opportunities too.
So, that really brings us to the big question, doesn't it? When you think about all of this, the physical roads and rails, the invisible digital networks, and the shifting political ties, they're all merging and influencing each other. So, what kind of connections, what kind of arteries will be the ones that define the UK's future?